when you go to conferences, do you hang out with people roughly in your age group, career level, or do you go out of your way to hang out with the students?
That's a very, thank you for asking that question.
Okay.
What do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do? Okay, the first thing is I haven't been to a lot of conferences
Okay.
recently because travel gets harder. I try and, people, the problem is, right? The problem is you know your friends.
Mhm.
And typically when you go to a conference, you will be kind of hanging out with your friends. You haven't seen them for a while.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you go like, oh, what's been going on? And so you try and catch up. But I'm also profoundly aware, because I remember very, very vividly and very painfully as a student, how hard it was to meet anyone. Okay, you meet other students, but you're looking for mentors, role models, advice, or whatever. And I remember, right, I really wanted to talk to this or that professor because they did work I was interested in or something like that. And I found it so hard to walk up to them and say, hi there, can we talk about this? And so I try and make an effort to talk to younger people.
Okay, I think that's really good.
But we're not on the socializing level anymore. To be clear, I think conferences are quite tricky places socially for students because, how close do you get to a senior person, and it can be dangerous territory. Yeah.
Okay. So I kind of want to comment on this.
Yeah.
Actually, now which direction do I want to go in? Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say. Okay, so last week I was at this conference.
Right. Maybe you can tell what this conference was, because I don't know what it was actually.
So it was a conference organized by MCQST, which is the Munich Center for Quantum Science Technology.
Yep.
Some conglomerate.
I've been to one of these. So
yes.
Yeah.
And I was actually invited to not the conference, but to the 2-day summer school that was before the conference.
Right. Okay.
And that was more aimed at PhD students. And I gave a talk on careers in quantum, which is actually on YouTube. And then there was a little panel that I was on. And then the next morning I gave a 3.5-hour workshop on something called informational interviews, which I can talk about later as well.
Okay, that sounds really fascinating.
So it was, the first 2 days was PhD students, and I was at all the coffee breaks and everything hanging out with the PhD students. And then came the 3-day scientific part of the program, and a whole bunch of new people showed up. The professors showed up, and they let me stay for the whole week, which I thought was really nice. And I was like, okay, I haven't been to academic conferences for a while. It'll be interesting to check this out. And I don't know whether it was because I think half of me, I was just used to hanging out with the students. Half of me was like, if they're having me stay at this workshop for this time, I should contribute something in return. And so I thought it was really important to spend every break talking to a different group of students, sharing life experience and everything. And so I was doing this, and I very quickly noticed that the new batch of professors that had arrived, they were all just hanging out with each other at every single break, bar a few small exceptions. And at first I was like, oh my God, like this is so bad. I was imagining a different world where like a student goes to this conference and has like 5 separate conversations with 5 different professors about life and about their careers and everything, and how valuable that would be. But at the same time, like I thought back to my experience when I was in academia. Whenever I went to conferences, I was just so excited to see my friends from my PhD days and just wanted to catch up. And I kind of just wasn't really like, thinking about the students as much as I was at this conference. And I'm not saying that at this conference it was particularly bad or anything. It wasn't. It was just, everyone was acting the same way that they act at all conferences. It's just that I kind of had a different perspective this time, and it was kind of sad for me.
It is that way, I fear. It's kind of easy to explain, right? I'm not going to apologize for the professors, but I am going to explain the situation. It's quite exhausting to be on during the conference, and if students are coming to you, like when you're with friends, right? There's a certain degree of easygoing relaxedness, right? You don't have to be on the whole time. You don't have to guard your words. And then students come to you, and then you're looking for this kind of maybe more mentoring discussion and so on. You have to be a little bit more careful about how you interact with students. And being switched on like that the whole time can be exhausting for some of us. For me personally, very much. That doesn't mean that I don't want to do it, but it's just it can be exhausting, and so it often has been the case that I will just flee, right? Because at some point you can't take anymore.
I think students can do something about this, approaching the professors, but I find when they do that, it's usually going to be a conversation about the research. And I think what's missing is more of these life conversations, career kind of conversations. And I think it's hard to ask for those. They happen more naturally when you're sitting at a table, a
Exactly.
bunch of students, one professor, and then someone
Mm.
asks a question, and then it turns into a conversation.
That can happen organically,
Mm.
often at the conference dinner that you
If
end
they
up.
don't all sit together.
If the professors don't all sit
Yeah,
together,
yeah,
then
yeah.
you'll get a professor kind of stranded at a table with six. Stranded is not the
Yeah,
right
yeah,
word, but
like,
they sit down,
yeah,
and then students sit down at the
yeah,
table
yeah,
around, and
yeah,
then fine, then
yeah,
that's a natural context and it works. But you have to make that happen by
yeah,
telling them
yeah,
professors not to sit next to each
yeah.
other, or you kind of engineer it as a student by sitting quickly down.
Yeah,
This is true.
yeah,
Good advice. If you see someone you're interested in sitting at a table, overcome your social anxiety and immediately get down at that table,
yeah,
even if it's surrounded by four other professors. Even if you
yeah,
sit there
yeah,
passively just listening, you probably get something out of it.
yeah.
But
That's good advice.
but it is something I'm conscious about all the
Mm.
time, because once upon a time I got a compliment and it stuck with me. And I'm not very comfortable with compliments, but this one stuck with me. It's from a person who's quite well known now. I won't say who it is. And he came. I met him many years ago, and I knew this guy, and I had a kind of good opinion of him. He was a PhD student at the time, and several years later he became an established professor,
Mm.
quite well known, I would say. And he said to me all these years later, he says, "I just wanted to take the time to thank you for this conference where we met all those years ago, because you were the only person who spoke to me."
Wow.
He had sat next to another famous person who I'm not going to name, and this person had literally done the whole thing what you
Yeah, yeah,
got.
yeah,
You're a physicist,
yeah,
turned away,
yeah,
and they just
yeah,
this guy had introduced himself, and this person just turned away, and apparently I didn't do that, and I was like, I don't
yeah,
remember not doing
yeah,
that, but
yeah, yeah,
but I'm glad that I didn't, and that stuck with me because I
yeah.
thought, I don't want to boast about it or something like that. Rather, it's a cautionary tale, right? As a professor, if you ignore someone now, a
Mm-hmm.
student, who you think, they're not worth it for me,
Mm.
that person could be your colleague in not too long a time, and that person could have some power. In fact, the person I'm thinking of has quite a lot of power now.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
if you're an asshole to them when they're a student, they probably will remember.
Yeah. Although I wish you didn't even have to give that motivation.
Yeah, I
Like,
wish not.
just
Yeah,
just
just be
be
human.
nice.
Be nice.
People
Yeah,
have feelings.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I could see why, but you just get
Yeah.
exhausted.
Yeah.
And
No,
you're
I
like,
know. I know. I know.
no, but okay, it's always worth the effort.